Now start.
Good afternoon. I'm Barry Wilson, and I and my wife own Wilson Auto Repair, and we're located in Garland, Texas. We've been right here for 40 years, and today I'm going to try to help you if you're interested in your classic car or truck. I'm going to try to help you understand some of the things that you get done at an automotive garage, and also understand what some of those parts are. So when you raise the hood on your car, you'll have a better understanding of what's there, and you'll enjoy it a little bit more. So there's all kinds of people that like classic cars. Some don't want to touch them at all, don't want to work on them, they just want to drive them on the weekends and have fun. But there are a lot of people that, and I see this online all the time, that have question after question after question on how to fix things. I'm not going to tell you how to fix it, but I am going to show you some of the things that will help you understand when that hood flies up what that thing is right there that you don't know the name of. So I think probably the best way to start is for me to walk you through my shop and give you a perspective of what an auto garage, and that's what we do. We fix cars here, but we also do restorations. And I'm going to walk you through here and show you some of the things that we do. Now let me tell you on the front end, if you want to get an outline of what happens here today, go to my website, which is wilsonauto.com, wilsonauto.com, and put the / in there and type under hood, and you can sign up and we will email you a copy of our outline for today's 1-hour seminar about under the hood of your car.
They're asking if I bring these people on. It says Lori Wilson's on.
Yeah.
And it says Ms. Watching, bring them on video. I don't hit bring them on video.
I'm not sure.
I hit her for her.
Okay. This is our first time, so if we mess this up very much, well, be patient with us. It's just me and my wife doing this. Okay, so now we're going to walk down through the end of the shop here, and I guess I would bring them online if they said bring them online. And let me show you some of the things that we do down here. So follow me down here. Making sure you're staying up with me. And at the very end of this part of the shop, you'll see that we have a CJ5 Jeep that we have started not restoring, but fixing all the things that we found wrong with it so that this gentleman and his siblings can use it on their ranch and enjoy driving it. So, you know, it's going to end up getting painted, but it's not going to be a total restoration. You can see underneath it and right here, we've put in a lot of new parts on it. And by the way, everything that we put on, we paint so you can see what we've done. Here's an MG that we completely restored. This is an MGB 1972 model. That actually belongs to my daughter. I did that for her, and I've got it down here in my shop right now. This is a 56 Chevrolet that we restored some time ago and painted for a fella. And we're doing a little bit of work under the hood, doing some touch up on the paint. And then over here we have a early Bronco that we have done a frame off restoration on. We are not finished, but you can see that we have done a lot of work on it. And it is in the process of winding up and being ready to go back out on the street. Now walk down through here with me, and you'll see this round body Chevrolet pickup. We're doing a lot for this customer to make this truck reliable. So that's mechanical work, you know, transmission, suspension, wiring, rear axle, oil leaks on the motor, oil leaks on the transmission. So that's what we're doing here. And up here, which is stored for the day, this is a Bronco that we're putting together. We started with the frame on my big frame machine, and we bought all the parts for a body of a Bronco, showed up in a big pallet, and we are assembling a complete body on the frame. This Camaro right here, we have done an extensive amount of work on it. We did all the mechanical work, then sent it out for a new top, new interior, and we are finishing up by putting new tail lights, new headlights, chrome pieces, interior pieces, new dash on it. So it's going to be virtually kind of a restoration, but not totally. We did not paint this car. Here's another car that came in because it has a brake problem. We were fixing the brakes on this so they work properly. Up here, we have GTO. And this GTO, we're adding a new steering column. We put a radiator in it. We put a new instrument cluster in it. And we have put air conditioning in it. So this car is about ready to go home as soon as we get the new steering column in there. Now follow me out into the main part of the shop. For some of you guys that are older, this kind of reminds me of the Edward R. Murrow program where he used to go into somebody's house and talk to them about how they lived their house. So I'm a pretty old guy, so I kind of remember programs that most of you probably don't remember. Watch your step going down from here. Here's a Mustang that's been in the family since the beginning, I think only within a few years, and we are doing a mechanical restoration again on this. It's not a paint and body or interior restoration. Fixing everything so it'll start, stop, and run properly. This is another Bronco that we're working on. This is another one where we built the body, and we're putting a Coyote motor and transmission, 6-speed, 6R80 transmission in it, upgrading everything on it, turning it into a complete restoration. This pickup's getting a automatic overdrive transmission, and we did a lot of work on that before the transmission that didn't get completed, and we are finishing it up so this customer can enjoy driving it. These are two restoration projects here. This was an Opel GT that's covered up, and this is a 64.5 Mustang that is covered up, and we're doing the final work on it to get it painted. We've done a lot of other mechanical work on it, and it's going to be a sweet little car when we're all done. Right, here's another Mustang that we are not doing a restoration on, but we're doing lots of brake suspension, pulled the motor out and resealed it type of work. So it'll be a nice driver when it's all finished up. And you can see down through here, this is my body shop back here. These cars back here are getting painted. That's another Bronco body that we're working on. Past that's a 66 Datsun Roadster that we're working on. And then off to the right is my paint booth where we do our paint and body work. So that's all paint and body down through there. Now you can see that there is a multitude of things that we do, and you know, it's kind of like when you used to go to the gas station, you'd ask them if they knew how to do this or do that. We feel like we know how to do about everything on any of the domestic classic cars made in the 60s and 70s. We go back and work on cars occasionally as old as Model Ts up through the 30s and 40s. And we get on newer ones that are Jeeps up through the end of the CJ7. I want to walk you back down here, and we're going to start a seminar on what's under the hood of your car. I'm going to try to give you some information that I hope will be useful, that you can take home, and it'll help you enjoy your car a little bit more. By the way, I name all my cars. These happen to be mine. This is the Queen over here. That's a 65 Olds Jetstar. This is a personal favorite of mine. It's not the most favorite, but this is Frankie. He's a 49 Ford pickup that I've picked up out of a pasture and have done a lot of work to. And I enjoy driving this truck. It reminds me of riding around with my grandfather, who, by the way, was a Ford dealer in a little town of 600 people. And he used to pick me up in the truck like this to take me down to his garage. So I have quite a history of working on cars and being around cars. I always liked being in the back end of his Ford dealership and watching the mechanics work. This truck here is Alma. I've had this truck for almost since it was new. And I raised my kids. They rode around in it with me. And there again, it's something that has a sentimental value. Hope to install a Coyote in it someday when my wife will let me have the money for that. And shorten the bed and kind of turn it into a different kind of truck. But I love old Alma. All right, let's go back down here. Here comes Kathy, my wife. She's going to video everything that we do here. So let me introduce you to Maxine. This belongs to my youngest daughter, Lori, the sweetest girl in the whole world. One day a fella came in and he towed this in from way back east, and it was really kind of a parts car when I bought it from him. And guess who found it out in the back? With my daughter Lori. And we have since restored it and turned this into Maxine. And Maxine will eventually go to my daughter's garage when she has time with all the children that she's raising right now. So when she is not using it, I get to drive it. Well, let's start with Maxine right here. And one of the very first things I want to teach you about your car is the hood latch. There are hoods that don't stay latched. They fly up while you're driving, cause a wreck, or hurt somebody and cause them to have a wreck. So let's look at that and see what's going on with it. I'm going to raise this hood up. And you'll see when I raise it up, there are two different mechanisms here that hold your hood down. This is the permanent latch. And I'm going to get a little light on it here, right here. And you can see right here, if you can put your camera right down here where they can see it. You see how this moves? Well, this part of it right here latches permanently to here. But if for some reason this doesn't latch, these two hooks grab this bar. And let me show you what that would look like if that happened. There you go. Now that hood's loose like this. So that's on what we refer to as the safety catch. And if you're driving down the road and you see your hood pop up like that, be sure to pull over and give it one of those and make it. And then always when you close your hood, pull on it pretty roughly, because older car latches don't work like you'd like them to sometimes. And it is really a bad thing if it flies up while you're driving down the road. It can hit your windshield, it could cause you to have an accident, it could fly off and hit somebody else's car and cause them to have an accident. So pay close attention to that. Make sure your latch works properly. What I did with Elmer up here is I put a chain right here, and when the hood closed, I kind of dropped it down through there and found a way to attach it with a padlock so nobody could get under my hood, but it also gave me a safety chain. Or on some of the cars, people like to put pins right here, and they also work as a safety catch to keep the hood from flying up when you're driving, especially on some of these Mustangs. So now, what's the best thing you can do to get started looking at your car? I suggest that you buy a manual. And by the way, you can go online to my website, wilsonauto.com, and you can go to the part of the little tab at the top that says Tools We Use, and you can actually find these manuals and order them for your car, as well as any of the other tools that we have that we're going to show you today. So if you see a tool here you think you want, go to my website, wilsonauto.com, go to the Tools We Use. There's a long list of tools there, and you can buy those tools online. Also, don't forget, if you want to sign up, go to wilsonauto.com/underhood, and you can get a outline of what we're talking about today. So now, why would it be important to have a manual? Well, surprisingly enough, there are sections in the manual that give all kinds of information, and here's a good example. See right there where it says specifications? You don't have to go online and ask a whole bunch of guys how tight a bolt needs to be, or you don't need to ask them what fluids you need to use or how this works. If you start by just looking at the specifications, you're going to find out that you're going to learn a lot about your car. In addition, surprisingly enough, you can see this manual's dirty, and this one's starting to kind of come apart. If you have manuals, we all rely on them. You can see there are assembly pictures and information, and they're not complete because they were written back in the 60s, but they're extremely helpful in helping you answer questions. Buy yourself a manual. Every time you have a question, see if you can find the answer in the manual. It will help you a lot. It'll tell you how to tighten your bolts, how much to tighten your bolts, how to assemble something, the correct switch sequence to put it together. It's a very valuable tool to use. Okay, something else that I think you ought to know, and I have these online, but I use paper towels in my shop. So you can do that, or you can buy rags like this one that's sitting underneath this old battery box. Rags are kind of hard to dispose of, whereas paper towels are not that hard to dispose of. They just go right in your trash. And this is what we use here. So there again, if you want to buy some of these, go to my website. The other thing that you're going to need is, if you're doing fluids, which we're going to talk about in a minute, there are all sorts of different funnels for different things in your car. So this would be one that would go in your radiator, whereas one with a smaller snout on it like this maybe would go in your transmission or your power steering. I keep mine in a bucket because, as you know, when you use them, they have oil in them and they seem to drain off and make a mess all the time. So you can buy a combination of funnels online, and it'll make it a lot easier for putting fluids in there. And just so I don't forget to tell you this, if you're using or going to install brake fluid in your car, brake fluid will take the paint off. So you always want to use a funnel, and you always want to keep simple green or some sort of cleaner around so that after you pour brake fluid and you make a mess or spill it on something, immediately wash it off with a simple green to keep it from taking the paint off from under your hood. So now let's talk about your car. Right here is the radiator. This is a container that holds the water and antifreeze that cools your engine. One of the things that you need to know is that this can freeze, and we're in Dallas, so we don't worry about that too much. But if you get up north of here, very far, you have winters that are fairly extreme and they're below freezing. If you don't have the correct mix of antifreeze in here, this could freeze, and it could freeze your motor and actually crack your motor or your engine, and you'd have to have it overhauled. So what should you do about that? Well, there's a tester. You can buy this online, and this tester will tell you the amount of freeze protection that you have in your radiator so that you know you can make it through the winter. So let's see how that works. First of all, I get people that tell me they can't get their radiator cap off. Well, it's very difficult sometimes on these radiators, but it's meant to turn, and you push down real hard and then turn like that. And you'll see that this radiator cap has a couple of little ears right here that catch right in here, and then this rubber piece seals right there. Inside of here is a mixture of water and antifreeze. It's supposed to be a 50-50 mix. You can't put straight antifreeze in your car. It will not give you protection. It has to have water with it to protect you. So you take this simple old tester, drop it down in there, squeeze the bob, and pull in some of that old green antifreeze. And if I can get this up here and get a light on it, we're going to see what the freeze protection level is here. If you can see that, it's at minus.
Can't see it with the light.
She can't see it with the light. Okay, well, there it says 34 degrees. So the protection we have is minus 34. If you get a perfect mixture of antifreeze with water, you'll usually end up at minus 34. That's plenty good for Dallas, Texas. I can tell you, if it gets under zero, we start panicking around here. But up north, you need that kind of protection, and you need to be sure that you have protection. Buy one of these, check your freezing level inside your radiator, just like I showed you, so that you're sure that you don't have pure water in there, especially if you just bought the car. I've had a lot of cars come in here that people didn't check, and I've had some of them that had cracked blocks because they didn't pay attention. When you finish, just squeeze this thing right here, empty it back into your radiator, line the notches back up on your radiator cap like that, push down real hard, and turn. And when it finally gets to the end where it's locked in position, you can't turn it anymore, it's stuck. That's what you need to do. Then wipe off what you got, and we'll move on. Now you want to know about antifreeze, I'm sure. So there are two types actually that we use here in the shop. The one that probably works best for your car is green antifreeze. And that's what it looks like. Look at it pouring out of there. You can see it's just perfectly green. And you put if you put a gallon of this in, you put a gallon of water in with it. In my shop, we buy it from a company that pre-mixes it, so we don't have to worry about mixture ratios. And we buy a gold coolant that they are now producing that offers a little bit better heat protection. In other words, it helps the motor stay cool in the summer. We don't worry too much about heaters down here. We worry more about motors that overheat. So this coolant helps us keep these engines from overheating. All right, that's pretty much an explanation. I'll get back to the radiator and some of the components on that later. But let's move to changing your oil. Now that's another thing that people do not understand very well, especially with older motors. So the one thing that you have to remember is that an older motor or engine has to have zinc in it. And this is what a bottle of zinc looks like. This one's by Lucas, and it says zinc. You can buy oil that has zinc in it. This one is made by Joe Gibbs. We use a 1050. Now what does that mean? Well, I mean 1550. That means that this is the viscosity. The lower the number, the thinner the oil is. The higher the number, the thicker the oil is. So this would be like water, and this would be like maple syrup. And it starts out thin so the motor can warm up, and then as it warms up, the oil gets thicker. My machine shop that I use says this is his favorite oil, and the reason that he likes this oil is because it's a lubricant, whereas most of the oil that's synthetic for new cars has a lot of detergent in it. It kind of cleans that motor, and it doesn't have to lubricate quite as much, whereas your older motor wants to be lubricated, and he likes this oil to lubricate better. There are other oils like AMSOIL, Valvoline Racing Oil. They all have zinc in it. I'm a little bit overprotective, so I always add this bottle of zinc no matter what they say about it in the oil, because I don't want a motor to get burned up because somebody forgot to put zinc in here and I don't have any way of knowing. Now, if you do your oil change at home, then you can't put the zinc in with the oil. You have to put in the oil and start the motor, and then you put the zinc in with the motor running. If you put it in without the motor running, this zinc won't, it'll just lay at the bottom of the oil pan, and it'll never circulate around with the other oil that's in there. So be sure that you save this. This is about a pint. Don't quite fill it up till you've got enough that you have room for this to go in. Now, for somebody that doesn't know about checking oil, let's take a look at how we do that. This is called a dipstick, and someday I'm going to probably understand what that means, but we used to in high school call each other dipsticks, and we thought we were kind of stupid. So you pull out your dipstick like this, and the first thing you do is wipe the oil off that's on there. And then you find that tube down there, and I'll probably have to have the light to see it because it's kind of hard to find. And you stick that dipstick back down in there again. There we go. Sometimes they don't go in but one way. You can see how resistant this one is. So you work with it till you get it to go all the way down. I think this one works best like this. I have to call my daughter and ask her how to check her oil. I practiced this yesterday. I didn't do a very good job of it. Okay, now we got it all the way down to the bottom where it bottoms out. We're going to pull it back out. This is the break-in oil that's in that car, and you can see it's starting to darken up a little bit, but this is the mark that we made when it's full with 5 quarts, and you can see the oil that's on there, and it's right up to the line. If it's not up to the line, then the oil line might be down here. That might mean you need to add a quart. Obviously, if you don't have any on your stick, then you are probably in trouble and need to add some oil. Let me put this back. Now that I've learned how to do it this time, okay? And the next thing we're going to talk about is power steering. How do you check your power steering level? There's actually 2 ways. On this car, it's a little different because I put a power steering pump on here, but I also put a reservoir up here that, if I can get this to turn off, this is where you fill up the power steering fluid on this car. Turn this out, and you can look down through there and you can see that there's fluid inside of that container. And it's about where it needs to be, but the power steering seems to be working okay. So that's one way you do it. But there is, the most common way is to check here's a pump. Right there. So this would be what would be mounted to your motor. The belt would be turning this pump, and you pull, or actually turn this cap right here. This is where you add the fluid and check the fluid. This is a GM power steering pump. And if we can see with my light here, you can see that there is a line on there that says full, and there's a little notch right there where my thumb is that shows where that line is to get it full. I usually rely on this, but I also look down in here just like I did that container right there, and I can see that there's fluid in there. If you want to add fluid, then this is what you buy, a bottle of power steering fluid. It will say on the back of this, don't add this to Hondas, and obviously you're probably not driving a classic car that's a Honda, but you can add it to the power steering on the systems that are here. It used to be we added on the Fords, we'd add transmission fluid, and then on the GMs we'd add power steering fluid, but now we just add power steering fluid to both. Now I'm going to show you something that I love about working on. You know, my guys right here, you can see it's dark under there. And we have all sorts of lights. So I bought, and my guys have this light. This is an under hood light that you can make bright and dim. And here's how it works. You pull it on your hood right there, and then you pull this part out like that and let it catch. And then you can direct it like this. Look how it lights up your hood. Isn't that great? And it makes it so much easier to work. Now, some of my other guys like to wear the lights that fit on their head. I like this light. This is a string light. That's the brand of it. I have a couple of them because I will let them run down and then I have to go get another one. And this is very bright. You can see already from when I tried to show you things with it, it really lights it up. So those are two lights that you may want to get for yourself. You go to my website, wilsonautorepair.com, and you can find these lights if you'd like to buy one for your good. This is a Milwaukee that just has a charger. It works great. Lots of light. Okay, the next thing that we're going to check is the brake fluid. That's kind of a challenge for most people because here's the reservoir that you have to open up to find out if you have brake fluid in there. And it has this spring on top of it that's really difficult to work with your finger. So you need a screwdriver to kind of get underneath it and leverage it away. So see it pop loose right there? Then now this stuff will take the paint off. So you raise this up like this and you look in there and you can't really tell from here, but that fluid is a little low right here and pretty normal in the backside. So you want to be pretty close to the top on both ends. We probably bled the brakes on this and didn't quite get it fuller. We had to burp with some air or something. Brakes work great on this car, but that's what you look at. And then you want to make sure this gasket is clean. And then you set your lid back on there like that, and you're going to find out that you can't get that thing back up on there again. So you get it up part way like that, and then I just use a screwdriver to kind of lever it back over and pop it on. There's two, on this particular one, there's a little indentation where this rod rised. You check it like that to make sure it's good. And that's how you check your brake fluid. If you need brake fluid, we use a synthetic brake fluid, and the reason we do synthetic is because brake fluid attracts water. When that water gets into your braking system, it then rusts out some of the components, makes them stick over time, and causes you brake issues. Synthetic is not attracted to water, and it works as well as the other type. And we use a .3. That's the Department of Transportation. Don't tell me why. I can't tell you why they got involved in this, but that's what we use. I think there's a .4 that applies to some of the other cars, but not the American cars. So that's what you'd want to use is this for brake fluid. Okay, the next thing we're going to check is the transmission fluid. So to do that, I've already done this, but to do that, you start the car and let it run a little while. It's a good idea to put your foot on the brake and just shift it through all the gears so that we know everything's filled up inside. And then you reach way down in here and you find the dipstick for the transmission, and you wipe it off just like this. My neighbor next door is a transmission specialist, and he always leaves the motor running while he does this. If you're going to do that, be sure you don't burn yourself because it's down there by the exhaust. Then you pull it back out again, and you check to see if it's on the full level. So now you can see on this one, it has low at that little dot there and full at that little dot there. And I'm full. The other thing here's what he does. The first thing he does is he smells it. Well, there's really no smell to this, but if your transmission is causing you problems and this is black and it smells kind of like it's burned or smells ugly, then you've probably got some transmission issues, and you can detect that just by checking your fluid. Now the Fords used to have their own transmission fluid, as did the General Motors. I put that dipstick back in there. But nowadays, this fluid right here, the Dex Merc will work on either one of them. So you can buy a bottle of this in any brand, and you can use this to fill your transmission by using your funnel here. Be sure you do it with your engine running, and don't add a whole quart. You know, add it a little bit at a time. Let the motor run until you get it full. If a car starts in the morning and it doesn't go in gear right away, then it could have seal issues or could be low on fluid. I find that quite often where somebody thinks they have a transmission issue, and actually they're just 2-3 quarts low because they have a leak or something that's caused the transmission to get to a low spot. I had a Mustang recently that came in, and he said it wouldn't go in gear, and he was 3 quarts low on transmission fluid. So you have to be careful to check that before you start calling me or somebody in another repair shop. So now I think the one thing that confuses people the most is batteries and electrical, and they get real afraid of all that type of stuff. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about batteries over here first, and then I'm going to show you how you can jump start your car if the battery's dead, and show you how to check for a few things on your battery. Number one, this is a battery that we took out of a car. It's not a good battery, but I keep it up there because it represents what batteries back in the 50s and 60s used to look like. And one of the service items that you had to perform on a battery was to screw this cap off and look down in there and then see that it was all these cells were full of water. And then some people were real particular. They only wanted to use distilled water in here. And we would fill them up with water. Nowadays, most of the batteries are sealed. So the reason for that is that the vapor that comes out of a battery is explosive. So if you happen to make a mistake and spark something here with the cap off, you could actually force this battery to blow up, or could maybe spit acid in your face. And that's what's in here is sulfuric acid reacting with lead plates on this particular battery. And it could cause you to, hurt your eyes or something. So wear some eyewear when you're doing this. Maybe wear some gloves. And be careful about this if you have an old battery like this in a car. If you check this fluid. Now, down in there, we can't really show you very well, but down in there you can see there's a little level area that you fill up, and not all the way to the top, but all the way up to that. And that's how you keep the batteries working. All right, now, let's say you put a battery in your car and you want to know how to install it. So you buy a tool like this that we have online, and you want to clean these so that when the battery cables slide over the top of them, you have a good connection. And especially on a winter day, you'll get a little moisture in here, you'll go out and try to start it and it won't start. That's because you've got a bad connection at the battery. So you simply slide this over the top like this and turn it, pull it back off, and you can see, if I get that light just right, see how shiny that got down at the bottom? It's still dark, but that's just the steel brush is all that is. But it cleans all that up. Now when you get to the battery cable, you just take this lid off. You can see I've used this a lot. And you stick it inside the battery cable that slides over this and turn it until you get it to clean like this, and then make sure they're tight. Don't go buy those cheap battery cables that have 2 bolts here that tighten down on your battery cable. You need to have a new battery cable, or you need to own a crimper so that you have a good connection. Electrical is a big part of your car. A lot of things you've added on depend on the electrical. And if you buy cheap battery cable ends, you're just starting a problem that's going to be hard to find and trace. We have a lot of cars that come in and claim they can't start because they put the cheap battery cables on there. So you can buy a complete battery cable. You can buy them by length and make sure they're there. Now, one of the things that I like and use a lot, because we don't always drive our classic cars. We leave them sitting in the garage, and then 3 weeks from now it's time to go drive them, and we go out there and the battery's dead because we left something on or because we just didn't pay attention to it. You can buy a battery tender that actually hooks up to your battery like this. You have 2 connections here, and by the way, with batteries, red is positive and black is always negative. So I marked that for you on this battery, but positive is also plus and negative is also minus. So always put your black cable to the negative and your red cable to the positive, like this. Take your battery tender with the extension cord that you use for your Christmas lights, go over and plug it into the wall. You'll find 2 lights here, the orange and the green. The green light will eventually come on if the battery's a little bit discharged, while the orange light will come on to show you that it is discharged. Leave it alone. Just when you get ready to come back and drive the car, unplug it, disconnect it, and your battery will always be charged. It's a really good tool to have. They're not a whole lot of money, and they will save you a lot of aggravation when you are wanting to go drive your classic car to dinner. Now, what happens if you need to start that car and you know the battery's dead? I gave one of these to my son for Christmas. I'm also giving him a battery charger, and he knows how to use both of them. This is a battery box. This is the next best thing to the battery tender, and it's there for an emergency. So it has two cables, and this particular one, you have to turn it on. So you plug it into the wall, and then when you're ready to use it, you just turn it on like that. It says 13 volts. Most of the batteries on cars are 12 volt, until you get back into the late 50s, and then they're 6 volt. If you have a 6 volt system, this is harsh on that 6 volt, so you can't really use this. If you leave it on there very long, you're going to cause a problem. So it's best if you have a battery tender that will switch from 6 to 12 volt. They are available. So then you just take these, and I wish I was here to ask you if anybody remembered, but you put red on positive, and you put black on negative, and then you can start your car. It's that simple. When it starts, remove them like that, and turn your battery off. Lots of people think that you can get shocked doing that, and that's really not true. You can make it'll make a lot of sparks, but it's not going to shock you. So don't worry about that, just hook it up. If there's a little spark while you're doing it, don't jump too much, and go ahead and hook it up. Keep one of these in your house. It works with your boat. It'll make you the most popular guy in your neighborhood. And my daughter Lori loves to be able to jump start people off, and she knows how to hook up jumper cables and battery boxes, as does my son. He's had enough dead batteries now in his life, he knows how to do that. Now, if you don't have one of these, especially in your car, and you left the lights on when you went to dinner because you thought they'd shut off by themselves, then you're going to need a set of jumper cables. Now, there are different kinds of jumper cables. Good jumper cables have great big cables on it. Most people buy something that's real flimsy and small, and they won't pass enough current for your car to start. Buy a good set. The other thing you need to do is, just think about this, if you pull in straight to park and your battery's dead, then you can't back your car out, so you're going to have to run your cables all the way to the back side. So look at this. I'm going to show you how long these cables are. See there, I can pull my wife's car up and hook up to her battery and walk back around to the front of this car and hook up to it and still jump it off. Look how much room I have left here. These are huge and long. The first day that my daughter went to college, we jumped somebody off because she had a set of cables like this in her Explorer. I made sure all my kids had jumper cables because I knew they'd leave their lights on sometime or another and they wouldn't be able to call me, and they all know how to do that. So get a good set. These are probably $100 or more, but they're well worth it. Stick them in the trunk of your car because you never know when your battery's going to be dead when you come out to get your car. Now, here's a service item that everybody sees but they don't know how to take care of. This is called the air filter. What this does is the air that goes into your engine comes through this filter. We had a little bit of internet pause there because it lost the connection with the internet, so you may have to stand back here a little bit. And I'll just walk up this way so we don't lose that connection right now. So, as I was saying, the air filter keeps the dirt out of your motor, and if you want to change it, and you don't know if it's dirty or not, then just get a light and shine through it. You can see that one's perfectly clean. It passes light. It's in good shape. I want to walk over here to this GTO because there's one thing I want to show you that I can't show you on Maxine the Mustang.
Sorry.
Yeah, I apologize, but for some reason, as you know how the internet is, and when you're an old person like me, you don't quite understand how all this works, but we tested this 2 or 3 times and we were getting good connections in the garage, and now all of a sudden right now it seems to be kicking us off, and I apologize for the interruption. Done? We're good? So what I wanted to show you with the GTO was that one thing that's not on that Mustang is the nut that holds the air cleaner on. We call this a wing nut. See how that looks? And it's real easy to work like this. And you just spin it off like a regular nut. You don't have to have a wrench. The one on my Maxine, this wing nut was very close to the hood when we shut the hood, so we put a smaller nut on it. Okay, I'm going to take a quick second break here just to make sure that this router's working, and I'll be right back. You may have shut this door right here. Oh. Oh. Okay, we're good. Still got a signal?
Yep.
Okay, back over to Maxine. You can see this air cleaner out container has 2 parts, an upper and lower. Sometimes they have a certain way that they go on. Put your air cleaner on there like that. You can see this goes to the front because it says Mustang. Put this on here. Usually there is a center stud or bolt that sticks up here and you put the wing nut on there. On this one we put our bolt down through there because we didn't want it hitting the top of the hood. All right. So now we're going to move over. And let me make sure with my notes here I've covered everything so I don't leave anything off. One other thing I need to talk about under here that I left off is the PCV system. Positive crankcase ventilation. This is a PCV valve, and it connects to the vacuum system on the motor. And then it is attached at the valve cover, which is this part right here. Under this is the inner part of the motor, and it just simply pulls out like that. So how does it work? Well, it's like a vacuum cleaner. Inside your motor, you have some pressure, some air pressure, that has to be ventilated out of the motor. That's what the PCV valve does. It sucks it out through here and runs it back through the motor. So how does it get air in? Well, it gets air in through the breather cap, which is this part right here. And this is where you add your oil, right here. So you get your funnel out, put your oil in right there, put your cap back in. But look at this cap. You see there's a filter in here that lets air go from here into here. And as the PCV valve is sucking air out of the motor, if any air is needed to enter the motor, it would come in through here. Now, if this isn't working properly, you're going to have some oil leaks because you're going to get some internal pressure in the motor and it's not being able to be ventilated. So make sure that your PCV valve is working. So start your motor. Pull your PCV valve out of the engine and stick your finger over it. It'll suck your finger right up against that. It won't hurt you, no big deal. If it's sucking well, then put it back in there. Check your breather cap to see if there is any positive flow coming back up out of it, or if the cap's stopped up. If you're getting air out of here, even with the PCV valve hooked up, that means that your engine has worn enough that it is creating so much pressure inside, the PCV valve can't suck it out fast enough. And you're probably going to eventually have to have an engine overhaul to fix that because the rings are probably worn out in that motor. All right, I'm going to move you over to this Mustang right here, just to give you some information about what's underneath your car. I'm going to turn my light on here. This is another light I like. It's chargeable. You can see how bright it is. It's really good to set around when you're working on your car, like if you need something under the dash and you want to point it up and the flashlight won't work, and that one over there is too big, then this is a good light for that. So let's walk underneath here. And we're going to start right at the very front. Okay. Once again, I apologize. I wish I had a better internet system. Something happened, caused you to need to leak out every once in a while. All right, so we know what the oil pan is. The oil filter on this car is not installed, but it would be right here. And you would hand turn it off, or you'd use a wrench to get it off of the engine. This is where the oil filter goes. This one is currently not installed. We had this motor out and cleaned it and cleaned it up, put it back in. Now, this is the exhaust. These are called headers. See, there's an individual pipe here for each cylinder. It's an 8-cylinder, so there's 4 pipes on each side. And this is where the exhaust comes out. It actually connects to the exhaust pipes eventually, and puts the exhaust out the back of the engine. People like headers because it gives a better sound, and it also gives the motor a little bit more horsepower. These would eventually connect to the exhaust pipes. Here's the exhaust pipe, one on each side, and those connect to the mufflers. These are Flowmasters, it looks like right here. That's the brand of these mufflers. And if you walk on back through here, see that the exhaust now comes out of the car. So all the way from the header to the tailpipe to the muffler to the back of the car. That's what that is. All right, now let's go back in here again. And here's your transmission right here. This is the transmission pan where the fluid's held. We checked the fluid earlier. This is where that fluid goes, right into the bottom of this. This is the transmission right here. So as the motor turns, transmission turns, it selects gears for you to use if it's an automatic, which this is. It turns the drive shaft right here. That drive shaft now connects all the way back to the front part of the rear axle. Here's the rear axle that has gears in it, and they ultimately make the wheels turn. Now this is in park, so I can't turn them, but as this is turning, gears in here turn and your wheels turn. If you have a Positrack, some people ask what that is. Positrack means that both wheels will turn under any situation. If you don't have a Positrack and say you're on slick roads or something, one wheel's is going to turn and the other wheel's not. So, and plus if you're a big old drag racer and you want to make sure you get great traction, you definitely got to have a Positrack. All right, let's go back up here again. And you can see that this is steering linkage, which means that when you turn the steering wheel, these rods make the wheels go back and forth so you can turn a corner. And these are the suspension components that hold the wheel and the brakes to the frame. These are called control arms. There's a lower control arm and an upper control arm. And on the upper control arm on this one is the coil spring that allows the wheel to go up and down as you hit bumps. These are, right here, are grease zerks. We're going to look at those in a minute. I'm going to show you how to grease your car. But look at this. There's one here. One here. On the other side of this, there's one here, one over here, one here. There's also one on the top of this control arm. And in some instances, there are grease zerks inside the U-joints. Not as often as it used to be. All right, I think I have kind of given you a basic understanding of what's here. Let's walk out here for a minute. I'm going to show you how to grease this. So you need a grease gun. There's 2 types. This is the cheaper one. It's a hand grease gun that you squeeze this, and this is attached to the grease zerk, and it will actually put grease in there. I've gotten lazy over the years, and I have a pneumatic one that I'm going to show you. To make this grease gun work, you have to buy a tube of grease. See it in there? You take the top off, and it has to be. Of course, you remove this lid right here. You'd like to open a can of a beverage, and then you stick it up in this like that, and then seal it up. So I'm going to take this apart just to show you what that looks like. You screw first. Oh, I didn't do that correctly. But what you do is you pull this handle out until it pops in this cap, and then you pull this out, like that. Stick your tube up in there. Stick this back up in there. I'm not going to wrestle with this, take up your time. But had I done this properly, this handle will actually pull out while this is still screwed in, and it will lock so this spring isn't expanded like that. I kind of messed that up. All right, so with a pneumatic air gun, you got to have an air hose. This is typical of a shop, you know, you get things wound up here. Get that loose. Walk over here if you will with me. You take the grease gun like this, and you push it, this little hole in it, you see the hole? That hole slides right up over that grease zerk, like that. You kind of feel it, did you hear that? It kind of catches. Now, when you get enough grease in there, it's going to show right here under this boot. So watch while I do this. Whoa, look at that, it came out. So now you've put enough grease in there. I always like to wipe that off, I think it's kind of dirty. Then take this off and wipe your zerk off. And you do that with every one of these grease zerks, and you have lubricated the suspension and steering system on your car. Same way with this one. This is a ball joint right here, and you do the same thing, and you'd watch that boot right there, and when it fills up with grease, then you have filled the ball joint up. You do the upper ball joint the same way. If these boots are bad, then the grease will start flying out, and you probably need to buy a new boot and put it on there. All right, back to Maxine the Mustang. Questions?
154. Time.
Huh?
The time is 154.
Okay. So just a quick synopsis of what we looked at here before we have to sign off. We have a radiator that holds the coolant. It's connected to the motor by the radiator hoses. You have a heater that uses the same water out of the radiator to make your heater work, and here are the heater hoses. You have a battery right here that has 2 cables on it. There's your brake master cylinder. Here's your air conditioning compressor. This is the distributor that hooks the spark plug wires up to your spark plugs. There's 8 of them right here. This is your ignition coil that hooks up to the center of the distributor cap that supplies the spark for the spark plugs. Here's the alternator that charges up your battery as the car is running. On this one, this is the power steering pump. This is the water pump. Let me show you what a water pump looks like real quick. The water comes into it from the radiator, and these little impellers, as you turn the motor, pump the water back up through the motor and out into the radiator, and it completes a cycle. And while that happens, this electric fan on this car right here sucks air across it, cools the radiator down, then cools the motor back down. On some cars, they have a mechanical fan that hooks there, and that's the way they came when they were brand new. On this car, we have a vacuum pump. This motor has a little bit of an oomph to it, and it doesn't create a lot of vacuum at idle, so we put an electric vacuum pump on there for the purposes of making our power brakes work at lower speeds. They don't quite work like they should when you are at a lower RPM. So this pump actually creates a vacuum in this tank, and when the vacuum is needed by the power brake booster, then it was supplied by this tank and through that pump. We also have an overflow tank right here. So on radiators, when you shut your car off, instead of spitting the fluid on the floor, which used to happen back in the day, it goes down into this tank and is stored there, and when the car cools off, it sucks it back out of the tank into the radiator and keeps it full all the time. Otherwise, every time you got ready to go someplace, you had to check your radiator to make sure it was full. This is your power brake booster right here. That gives you power brakes. This is the master cylinder that has steel lines that hook it up to the different wheels to make the brakes work. This is where you add oil. This is your carburetor right under here. That is what puts the gasoline out of your tank into your motor. And this is the air filter that supplies fresh air, clean air to your engine. Over here on this car is the starter solenoid. So when you turn the key to start the car, this mechanism actually engages the starter to make the car start. And that's called the starter solenoid. This is the condenser for the air conditioner. This is like the outside unit at your house. This is a filter for that AC unit. And on this car, that is a cooler for the transmission fluid. That pretty well wraps up what we were trying to pass along today. We didn't actually get to talk about all the stuff we wanted to talk about. So maybe we'll come back in a few weeks and have another seminar. Let me know if you enjoyed this. Send me something on my email, wilsonautorepair@gmail.com. If you want to buy or want to sign up so you can get a copy of the outline, go to wilsonauto.com and /underhood. If you want tools, go to that same site, wilsonauto.com, and go to the tools we use. Or if you want to talk to me, I have a site there where you can actually pay for some time and we can visit on the phone for up to 20 minutes. My name's Barry Wilson. Been here 40 years. Happy to help you whenever you need help on your car. Come by and see us. We'd love to show you around the shop, and have a great weekend.